I don't just talk about other people's stuff, I also make my own. Books in particular. To date, I have 4 books you can check out on Amazon. Operation Red Dragon: The Daikaiju Wars Part 1, Occult Mafia, Emerald of Maddox City, and the short story collection Assorted Absurdities, Tales of Kaiju Punk and Other Genres. Hop on down to the description for Amazon links to all 4 books. Enjoy whichever ones you read, and enjoy the video. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm the Omni viewer, and I'm covering this because I don't see enough people covering it. Of the channels I'm familiar with that cover a lot of this real-world idiocy and censorship and whatnot, I don't see enough people covering this topic. And I feel like it's important. I feel it is very important that more people know about this so more people can actually do something about it. So, I'm doing my part to make sure that happens. I don't know how many of you are familiar with it, but there is a graphic novel, usually split into 2 parts, called Mouse by Art Spiegelman. It is considered one of the greatest graphic novels ever written. It usually makes any list of the graphic novels you have to read at some point, even if you don't like graphic novels. Sometimes it even makes lists of just regular books you have to read. It's that important. It's considered that necessary, that good. What it is about? Well, despite the cover featuring anthropomorphic animals, and this is just in case you don't realize what it is, maybe you've never heard of this before, but what Mouse is a nonfiction work. It is actually about Art Spiegelman interviewing his father, or at least attempting to interview him, about his father's experience surviving the Holocaust during World War II. It is a very intense, very emotional story. And it's a true story. The choice to portray everyone as anthropomorphic animals, specifically Jews are mice and Nazis are cats, that is an artistic choice. It's meant to sort of, well, I said in a past video that the point of anthropomorphizing animals is usually for some sort of allegory, or usually to somehow convey a bit of information about the character to the audience visually. In this particular case, Jewish mice and Nazi cats, that is depicting what happened during the Holocaust in terms of a predator-prey dynamic. Not everyone is ever going to realize what it was like to be a Jew in that time, thank God. But anyone can understand the cat and mouse dynamic. So that was the idea behind this. That is why it was done this way. And it is actually a very good way to present it. It makes the subject, I don't necessarily want to say more palatable, but it's hard to explain, really. You just have to read it. You have to actually experience Mouse for yourself. Now, that being said, this is not something I would recommend for kids. And it's definitely not meant for kids. It's about the Holocaust, for heaven's sake. You do not, just because it has that sort of simplistic, cartoony aesthetic, that doesn't mean it's kid-friendly. It is, at the most, for young adults and up. I would say, I mean, these are copies that I got from a school library sale. Hence why they're covered in the plastic stuff and they have YA things on them here and there, and why they look a little beat up. But that's sort of like in the 8th grade, 7th, 8th, and high school range. That, I would say, is where you can start reading Mouse. And maybe that's part of the idea. It helps to convey it to someone who maybe isn't quite mentally ready to fully realize what the Holocaust truly meant. And even for an adult, someone who maybe knows about the Holocaust, it can still have that effect. It can still make you see it in a whole new light, and maybe even be an effective teaching tool. Teaching. That is actually significant to the news I am bringing up today. For you see, it was announced that a Tennessee school board voted unanimously to ban mouse from the school curriculum. It used to be that it was part of the 8th grade curriculum about history and World War II and the Nazis and the Holocaust and whatnot. Not anymore. The book is banned from school curriculum statewide. And that, well, that is a bad thing if ever I heard one. Now, you'll never believe the reason why. If you haven't heard this story already, you're going to hear the reason why they decided to ban mouse, and you'll think, that is the dumbest thing I have ever heard. Of all the reasons I've ever heard to censor something, that has got to be among the stupidest, if not the stupidest. Are you ready? I don't think you are, but I'm going to tell you anyway. Here's the reason. The reason is not because it's a depiction of the Holocaust. It's not because it deals with death and violence and the extermination of an entire subculture of people from Europe. No, that's not the reason, which I guess is a good thing because that means we are not dealing with actual Nazis, even if they are adopting certain policies that the Nazis would approve of. But that's not the reason. It's, as far as we can tell anyway, it has nothing to do with anti-Semitism. At least at this point, it doesn't seem that way. No, here's the reason given. The reason is because there are some mild curse words in it, like damn, and there is a scene with some female nudity in it, of an anthropomorphic female mouse in a bathtub. Now, as far as the cursing goes, it's mild. And remember, it's a true story. These are basically transcribing the interviews that Art Spiegelman had with his father about his experiences. He is transcribing the actual words that were said. So this is nonfiction. He is giving it a direct... And if that's what was said, that's what was said. You can't really... I mean, and it's mild. I don't curse normally. I know I just said the word for you, but I am not a sort of person who curses. I just have never felt the need to. You basically have to get me to incredible Hulk levels of anger for me to start cursing. And that's not an invitation for you to try, by the way. But even as someone who doesn't curse, I know that sometimes when you're writing, the only word you can use to fit is a curse word. Sometimes. I try to make sure it's actually very strategically placed on the rare occasions I do it, but sometimes that happens, and that's when you're writing fiction. If it's nonfiction, and that's what the person says, I mean, if you want to stay true to life, you have to quote that person. And again, it's a very mild curse word. I guarantee you that the 8th graders in Tennessee are saying far worse words already. So, not that they should, not that they necessarily should be using that language, and not necessarily that it should be encouraged, but, I mean, that in and of itself, the point is, that's not a reason to ban this thing. But what about that bit of nudity? I mean, we don't want children exposed to that, right? Well, here's the thing, and this was confirmed by Art Spiegelman himself. He said, this is what it's about. And if you actually read the book, it actually is pretty obvious. That is a scene of his mother having slit her wrists, and she's bleeding out in the bathtub because of the events that occur in the story. And Spiegelman himself said exactly what I think, that you have to have some really weird kinks in order to find that sexual, which is the whole point. They're censoring it because of nudity, and they think nudity is inherently sexual. Me, I don't necessarily believe that nudity is inherently sexual. I believe there's a reason why there are statues and paintings in museums, but there aren't issues of Playboy. But the thing is, even ignoring that, This is a scene of suicide. And what they're upset by is the nudity. They are missing the point of the scene. It's ridiculous. I almost can't believe it myself. There's a shot that this is a scene of a woman who cannot deal, who can no longer bear all the things that have happened and has chosen death over continuing to live with it. And they're upset that she's indecent and hasn't covered up? What next? They chastise a person who's choking in a restaurant because they spilled sauce over their brand new shirt? Priorities, seriously. That's the reason. That is the reason given. And here's the thing. The book is currently banned from the curriculum, but the original idea that they were discussing was editing the books to remove those elements. Like, white out the curse words, cover up the nudity. They do not have the right to do that. I'm glad they didn't go that route, and I hope they didn't discuss it for very long, because that would have been way overstepping their bounds. Like, that would actually be literal censorship right there. It actually, like, I don't think it's a coincidence. Earlier today, the day I'm recording this, I saw a video about how China censored the end of the movie Fight Club to completely change. You can look up how the Chinese government censored it on your own time, but the thing is, that was the level of power they were looking to wield over this story. And I guess it's a good thing they decided not to, because that would have set a bad precedent in its own right. But, you know, saying that it's better to have banned the book outright than to have edited its content is like saying getting your fingers slammed in a car door is better than having your foot chopped off. Neither of them are actually good. And the fact is that it is removed now. And it shouldn't be. Look, like I said, Mouse is not for children. Mouse is for an older audience. At the youngest, it is for an audience that is starting to learn about the Holocaust. An audience that is starting to become more aware of those kinds of historical atrocities. It's not the sort of thing that should be removed. It's not easy to read, sure. And I mean in terms of taking in that content, but it still should be read. And look at what's just happened. It's been determined by a group of people that it shouldn't be read. One of the arguments even made in favor of editing it was that it was compared to, like, when a movie is in theaters and it has a nude scene in it, but when it plays on TV, that nude scene is removed and it's the same movie. Really dumb argument. First of all, a nude scene in your average movie is usually sexual in nature. So it's not comparable to a scene where the focus is supposed to be on a woman committing suicide. Second issue with that argument, most movies that have those kind of scenes in them are fiction. Mouse, as I've stated multiple times by now, is non-fiction. By editing it or by censoring it, what they are doing is editing or censoring real life. They are editing / censoring the real experiences of a Jewish man who lived through one of the greatest atrocities in human history. That is what was being discussed, and removing it entirely is what was unanimously decided on. You know, I've spoken the last couple of years against the idea of cancel culture, which, let's be honest here, cancel culture is just another form of censorship. It serves the same purpose, it's basically the same thing. And I can't help but wonder if what's going on in Tennessee with Mouse is the next step. Because, you know, we've seen cancel culture evolve. If you've been paying attention, you've seen how it's changed. It started as sort of a formless mass. Not really an organization, but definitely a contagious idea that was unrelenting, spreading like crazy, like certain other diseases that have been in the news of late. Then in 2021, it moved to the next stage. Self-censorship, self-cancellation. Pepe Le Pew got shelved by Warner Brothers for perceptions of being misogynistic and sexist towards women. Never mind that that was never actually the joke which in fact everyone who called for his cancellation seemed to miss. Dr. Seuss's own publishing house allowed several of his books to go out of print forever due to images that were deemed racist. Never mind that those images really aren't that offensive when you get right down to it, and never mind that they are no longer even being allowed to be resold on eBay, but you can still get literal Nazi propaganda on eBay. Apparently Mein Kampf doesn't have as many dangerous ideas in it as there's a locket in my pocket. Later on, of course, J.R.R. Tolkien's estate released itinerary for their next big event, and every panel at that event was either chastising his work for not being woke or practicing revisionist history to pretend that it was always woke. So at that point, the organizations were starting to censor themselves in anticipation of someone else coming to try censoring them. And now we have this event in Tennessee, where an actual school board, a group of people who hold a certain degree of power for what goes in the entire state, decided to censor Mouse. I don't want to believe that this is the next step. But if it is, there's only one more step beyond this. You know what it is. And once we reach that step, it'll be very difficult to undo. You know, I used to be silent about this too. I saw these things happening and I was like, it's got to die down at some point. Someone else will take care of it. There's no way this insanity is going to really keep going. Saner heads will prevail. I got sick of waiting for those saner heads to prevail, so I'm trying to be the saner head now. And I'm seeing where this is going. Now, of course, you may have heard what I just said, and you might think, well, if you're implying that the government is going to start censoring these sort of things, that's ridiculous, Omni. Things will never get to that point. You're just trying to scare us. It's not going to happen. Did you ever think any of the stuff that's currently going on would happen? It used to be that we only needed one canary to die in a coal mine to let us know there was danger. We've had canaries dropping all around us for years. How many more do we have to lose? 50? 100? 1,000? A million? This is a big deal. If this takes, if this is not reversed, and it catches on, then that's it. Like I said, there's only one more step after that. So to the people of Tennessee, I urge you to get this decision reversed. Any means necessary, within reason, somehow fight this. And to people in the other 49 states in the Union, and in Canada, in Mexico, in all the countries of South America, and Europe, and Asia, and Africa, and Antarctica, anywhere, if you see this sort of thing happening, or continuing to happen, stand against it. Put your foot down and say no more. Because this is a slippery slope. It's not a fallacy. It's happening. It's been happening. The only good that could possibly come out of any of this is that more people will have their attention drawn to Mouse, and more people might finally feel compelled to read it. But that's going to be little consolation if things really do get worse. Congratulations, you reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, you might want to consider supporting us on Patreon. Of course, the other way to support us is to go to Amazon and check out our books: Operation Red Dragon, The Daikaiju Wars Part 1, The Occult Mafia, Emerald of Maddox City, and Assorted Absurdities, Tales of Kaiju Punk and Other Genres. Also check the description for links to DeviantArt and other platforms we operate. Thank you all for watching. We'll see you next time.